Warm greetings to all of you. In this video, we are going to discuss the remaining characteristics of the community. Stratification refers to the arrangement of the components or organisms in different layers in a community. There are two types of stratifications, vertical stratification and horizontal stratification. Vertical stratification refers to the vertical distribution of organisms in a community. The individual layers are occupied by different animal and plant communities. The vertical stratification is clearly seen in a forest community. Vertical stratification of forest community shows 5 strata or layers. They are the subterranean layer, the forest floor, the stratum of herbaceous vegetation or herb layer, the stratum of shrubs or shrub layer, and the stratum of trees or tree layer. The subterranean strata is the basal portion and formed of roots, tubers, earthworms, insects, protozoans, bacteria, etc. The forest floor is the second layer and this is the zone of decomposition. It is occupied by dead organic matter, litter, fungi, bacteria, snails, etc. The stratum of herbs is the third layer formed of herbaceous plants and some grasses. The number of species in this layer is less compared to the other higher layers. The stratum of shrubs is located just above the herbaceous layer and it is occupied by plant-eating insects and spiders. Stratum of trees is the topmost layer and is also called crown layer or canopy layer. It represents the highest limit of the plant community in that area. It is occupied by animals like lizards, tree frogs, squirrels, monkeys, etc. All the above said layers are well marked in the diagram provided. The vertical stratification also occurs in aquatic communities based on light penetration, temperature, amount of dissolved oxygen, etc. Usually, the penetration of light in the aquatic environment causes 3 layers, that is euphotic zone, dysphotic zone and aphotic zone. Coming to the horizontal stratification. In horizontal stratification, individuals are distributed on a horizontal plane in the community. In a terrestrial community, the individuals are horizontally distributed in 3 ways, namely uniform or even distribution, second one clubbed distribution, and third one random distribution. In uniform or even distribution, the individuals are distributed uniformly throughout the community. In club distribution, the individuals are aggregated into groups. In random distribution, the individuals are irregularly placed. Here in the diagram, you can see the different horizontal zones in a marine environment. The next characteristic of the community that we are going to discuss is ecotone and edge effect. An ecotone is a zone of junction or a transition area between two adjacent communities. Or it is the area where two communities meet and integrate. For example, a grassland represents an ecotone between forest and desert. Similarly, an estuary is an ecotone between freshwater and saltwater, that is between river and sea. Like that, the mangrove forest represents an ecotone between marine and terrestrial ecosystem. The transition zone is well marked in the diagram provided here. The number and the population density of some of the species are much greater in the ecotone than the two adjacent communities. It is called edge effect. The organisms occur more abundantly in the ecotone are known as edge species. A well-developed ecotone contains some organisms which are entirely different from that of the adjacent communities. Coming to the ecological niche, according to Odom, niche is the profession of an organism in the community. Or niche refers to the functional status or the role of the organism in the community. It includes what it eats, its behavior, how it responds to the environment, and its interaction with the organisms in the community. For example, tiger and deer live in the same habitat of the forest community, but they have different niches. Tiger is a carnivore and deer is a herbivore. So, by occupying different niches, animals escape from competition. The organisms that occupy the similar ecological niche in different geographical regions are known as ecological equivalents. Kangaroos of Australia and bison of North America are ecological equivalents. Regarding the concept of community, there are two views regarding the nature of community. They are organismic concept and the individualistic concept. The organic concept was proposed by Clements. The concept regards that the community has all the characteristics of an organism such as development, dominance, cooperation and so on. The individualistic concept was proposed by Glisson. It considers the species as the essential unit of the community. The concept regards that the community is a collection of species requiring the same environmental conditions. Ecological succession is an important characteristic of community. The ecological succession is an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of a stable or climax community in a particular area. Or simply, ecological succession is the process of development of new communities in an area. In the development of a community, a series of communities develop and they replace one another in an orderly sequence until the stable community or climax community is produced. The various developmental stages of a community are called seri, and each stage is called a seral stage. The first community to inhabit an area or the first seral stage is called a pioneer community. The final stable community is called climax community. Here, the community development or the sequential series of succession is diagrammatically represented. The pioneer or the first community is followed by or no more intervening communities or seral stages, and finally a stable climax community is established. We know that the ecological succession is a complex process and it may take thousands of years. The process of succession involves a series of 5 sequential steps. The first one is nudation, then invasion, competition and coaction, reaction and stabilization. Nudation is the first step in ecological succession. Nudation is the development of a bare area. The causes of nudation include topographic, climatic, and biotic factors. Invasion is the second step in ecological succession. It is the successful establishment of a species in the bare area. Invasion is followed by competition and coaction. When the number of species increases within a limited space, it results in competition between individuals for food and space. The competition may be intraspecific or interspecific. The fourth step is reaction. It is the modification of environment through the influence of living organisms present in it. The last stage is called stabilization. The terminal community or the climax community becomes more or less stabilized and remains in equilibrium with the climatic and the environmental conditions of that area. The stabilized community is also known as the climax community. Now let us have a look at the characteristics of a climax community. The climax community is the stable end product of successional sequence. The climax community cannot be replaced through competition. In climax community, energy is at a steady state, that is, the net production is zero. Climax community remains in equilibrium with the climatic and the environmental conditions of that area. Climax community has higher levels of species diversity. The climax community also has a well-established nutrient cycle. The soil conditions in the climax community are more favorable with greater organic content. The climax community have greater community complexity and habitat diversity. Ecological succession can be classified into primary succession and secondary succession. Primary succession is the development of a community on a lifeless barren area like sand dunes, newly exposed rock area, volcanic islands, etc. The first group of organisms inhabiting ecological succession is the pioneer community. The secondary succession is the development of a community in an area which is already occupied by a well-developed community. The destruction of the previous community can occur due to forest cutting, forest fire, flood, severe drought, landslides, earthquake, etc. Now, let us see how the primary succession differs from the secondary succession. The primary succession occurs in bare areas that has not been previously occupied by a community, while the secondary succession occurs when the primary ecosystem gets destroyed. In primary succession, lichens are the pioneer community, while in secondary succession, grasses, shrubs, weeds, etc. form the pioneer community. Again, the primary succession takes a very long time, that is maybe about thousands years to reach the climax community, while the secondary succession takes a shorter period of time, that is about 50 to 100 years to reach a climax community. Primary succession begins on sand dunes, volcanic islands, lava flows, etc., while secondary succession begins in an area once destroyed by forest fire, landslide, earthquake, etc. Coming to the types of ecological succession, based on the habitat, ecological succession can be of different types. First one is xerosphere or cirrus. It is the sequence of successional stages on dry habitat like desert. Second one is lithosphere. It is the sequence of successional stages on a bare rock. Third one is anosphere. It refers to the succession on sandy areas. Next is hydrosphere or hydrarch. It is the sequence of successional stages in a pond or in a lake. Halosphere refers to the succession in saline soil or saline water. And senile refers to the succession of microorganisms on dead matter. Here we will discuss the hydrosphere in detail. We know that when succession starts in water, it is called hydrosphere or hydrarch. The succession on a pond starts with the phytoplanktons. So the phytoplanktons form the pioneer community in a hydrosphere. And through different seral stages, they reaches the climax community. The phytoplankton stage is followed by the next seral stage called rooted submerged stage. As a result of the death and decomposition of planktons, a soft mud develops at the bottom of the pond. It initiates the growth of rooted submerged vegetations like Hydrilla, Vallisneria, Utricularia, etc. The vegetation invites the nymphs of dragonflies, mayflies, and other invertebrates. As a result of the deposition of silt, the pond becomes shallow and submerged plants are replaced by the floating plants like Pistia, Nymphia, etc. This stage is called floating stage. The growth of thick vegetation invites invertebrates and these are followed by the fishes, snakes, turtles, etc. The floating stage is followed by an amphibious stage called reed swamp stage. Even though the plants in the reed swamp stage are rooted. Most parts of their shoots remain exposed to air. The vegetation includes typha, sagittaria, etc. With the advent of the emergent plants, dragonflies, mayflies, etc. begin to make their appearance. Lung-breathing snails also appear at this stage. With the further decrease in water levels, sedges and grasses like carex, juncus, etc. dominate the area. These plants accumulate plant debris and soil. This is called the sedge meadow stage. Birds like heron, kingfisher, etc. make their appearance in this stage. Sedge meadow stage is followed by the woodland stage. In the woodland stage, certain species of shrubs and medium-sized trees appear to form open vegetation or woodland. They make the habitat more dry, and all the aquatic animals disappear completely. The shrubs and medium-sized trees are followed by large trees. Now the soil is enriched with minerals and ultimately a stable community is formed. It is primarily controlled by the climatic condition, and a forest is finally formed. Then forest animals appear, forming a climax forest community. So in a hydrosphere or hydrarch, phytoplankton forms the pioneer community and a forest will be the climax community. In between, there are several intervening stages or chiral stages are included. And this is all about the characteristics of community. Thank you.